Okay, welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, your franchise guide. And today we have a very special guest. Today we have Tom Scarda from the Franchise Academy. Tom, wanted to welcome you to the show.
Hey, G, thanks for having me on. This is pretty awesome for having me on your show. This is awesome.
Yeah, this is great. I think I was on your show maybe 3 weeks ago. So we had such a great time. And, in these shows, you can only cover so much. And I said, you know what, let me invite you on my show. Let's continue that conversation. For those listening in, Tom and I work together. We're both part of the organization FranChoice, where we help people achieve the American dream of finding their own business to achieve time and financial freedom. So, you hear it, you always hear it from me. So I want someone else to talk about franchises and get some valuable advice. And we'll talk about towards the end of the show, how to get in touch with Tom. But very, very excited. First consultant on the show. So congratulations on that. Yeah. So let's I guess kick it off with, the audience. A lot of feedback I get are first-time business owners, and they're making that career transition. So, tell. I know your background, but tell everyone listening in, what was that career transition journey? How did you get into franchising and now franchise consulting?
Yeah, so great question, and I like to talk about this piece because the thing that I like to talk about is I'm just a regular guy. I'm not an entrepreneur by heart or by training or anything like that. I actually used to be a New York City subway conductor. So if you've ever been on a New York City subway, I was the guy opening and closing doors. Mm-hmm. And back in 1999, I was actually on vacation, my little 2-week vacation. And I went to visit my brother in San Diego. And he said, hey, I got to take you to this great ice cream shop. It's awesome ice cream. There's a line out the door every night. So we go there, and sure enough, the place was rocking. And it was a little, I didn't know it at the time, it was a franchise called Cold Stone Creamery. Mm. And I was like, oh, my God, I want to do this in New York. It's going to be a hit. So went back home, got on the internet, as feeble as it was in 1999, and I requested information from Cold Stone Creamery. By the way, to this day, they have not gotten back to me. And I also found a company called FranChoice, who we both work with now. And so FranChoice called me back, and I got on the phone with a consultant that does what you and I do. Mm-hmm. And they explain that, we go into this in-depth conversation and we do a consultation and we figure out your skill sets and your goals. And I'm like, let me save you the time. We don't need to do that because I know what I want.
Right.
And there's a lady by the name of Carol. And Carol was like, what do you want? I said, well, I really want a Cold Stone Creamery. And she said, well, okay. So you had told me at that point already that my budget was $100,000. And a Cold Stone Creamery was $350,000 to open one.
Wow.
So she said, it's not in your budget. And she said, but if you did have the money, I would really vehemently try to talk you out of that concept. And I was like, why? And she said, because the franchise agreement is lopsided. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? I'm a subway conductor. I have no idea. And she's like, well, they charge so many fees. The franchise corporate is making all the money. The franchise owners in the shops are making pennies on the dollar. I was like, oh, man, I wouldn't have known that. So then we went deep into it. And I was working on the subway, and this old timer said, hey, kid, this is a great job because you'll always have a shirt on your back. And he said, it'll never be a silk shirt, but at least you'll always have a shirt.
Right.
And I was like, wow, that's like mediocrity, man. I got to do something more than that. I want to be a business owner. I want to open up this Cold Stone. So I went in and had a deep conversation with this franchise consultant. She matched me to a smoothie franchise, something called Maui Wowie Smoothies. It was in my budget. It was only $70,000. I dove in 2000. I built it into 3 locations and then sold it in 2005 and semi-retired at 41 years old. And I don't say that to impress people, but I say that to say, listen, if I can do it, anybody can do it. It's just a matter of picking the right franchise, but also having the tenacity to make it work, be coachable, follow the system. And so we sold. And I just got to share this part because we sold the business and it was great. Then my wife wanted to buy a second franchise called Super Suppers. And that was a concept where you come to our location, you make meals following our recipes, use our ingredients. On days when you're busy, you just go in and you take these meals that you made with your own hands, take it out of the freezer in your home, and throw it in the oven, have a home-cooked meal in 20 or 30 minutes. It sounded fantastic, and we dove in, and I was cocky. I didn't consult anybody. I didn't talk to anyone, and we bought the franchise almost sight unseen. Started out with a bang, got a lot of attention. Within 2 years, we were out of business and lost almost our entire life savings on that franchise. And that's what kind of made me a franchise expert, was going through that debacle. So my long-winded point in all of that is that anybody could do it, but you really should get a coach so you can learn, talk to G here, because he can show you the way, because he's owned and operated franchises and he knows the ins and outs and the reasons why to pick things and why not to pick certain things. And it's typically not what people think. People are like, oh, I need to, do something that has to do with my hobby. And so, no, that's not the way to go.
Right. Yeah. And you had mentioned, so on that second franchise, and I, by the way, I also investigated, I can't remember the name of it, but similar type of franchise. So that second one, what's that?
Entrevu is the one you probably looked at.
Entrevu. That may have been it. I forget it. I love the concept. I felt, young family, just not having enough time. And I thought it was going to be a hit. And I forget why we didn't move forward, but I was doing the research, on my own at the time. On that second franchise, you said you did not consult with a consultant, correct? You just went.
I just went in head first, didn't talk to anybody, and didn't. I hold nothing against the franchise company. I chose to buy the franchise, so I didn't sue them or anything like that. And they tried to make it work. It just didn't work. So I hold nothing against them, but they were just a really great culinary school in Texas. Mm-hmm. They were not a franchisor.
Right.
And so they didn't know. The thing, G, that I like to share with people is that there's no rules or laws that say who could be a franchise or who can't be. Anybody could be a franchise. You just have to get the documentation. You apply with the Federal Trade Commission. There's laws about how you could sell a franchise, but the Federal Trade Commission doesn't care if your franchise makes money or if you support your franchisees. They only care if they want to make sure you're not a terrorist organization or money laundering or a pyramid scheme. But other than that, there's no protection on that side. So you could be talking to a franchise that you think is the best thing ever because you like their food or something, and it could be a disaster, and you're going to end up losing your money because they don't know what they're doing. Yeah,
and that brings it to the point, in what we do, we're not. I made the mistake. I remember in my bio, right in the bio, and I put franchise expert. 15 years in the business, own franchise and non-franchise businesses, but in reality, we're not franchise experts, right? In reality, we are in a completely separate business. I almost take it outside the franchising industry, and I think of ourselves as we're in the people business. We're in the business to figure out if you are the right fit for business ownership, and is that business in the structure, right? In the segment of franchising, because people have to really appreciate and respect the value proposition of a franchise. A franchise is a proven business model. You have that support. That's why there's no true pros and cons of franchising. It's either you want the business built for you so that you can run with it, or option B is, and there's various franchises, or you can have a startup. So it's not about which is better. It's more about, what is the best fit for you, for the person that you're speaking with. So, a lot of people expect me to say, what's better, franchising or not? And I said, well, I've only spoken with you for 5 minutes. I need to get to know you to figure out, which is that good fit. So, talk to us a little bit about that. Talk to us about, we speak with numerous people every week. They want the hot franchise. Just point me in the right direction. What do you say to those people that I want the hot franchise, or I want the Cold Stone Creamery, what do you got available? What do you say to those people?
You know, well, first, you have to ask why. You have to kind of get them to look at like an introspection about why, and they might have a good reason why they want that particular franchise. Maybe they have a business where they could also use the same customer base and cross sell and stuff. So maybe it might work. But for the most part, people say something like, well, I really love their food, or there's none in my town, or I saw an empty store and I think it'll be great in that store. All of those are not reasons to buy a particular franchise. There's actually 21 reasons why somebody chooses a franchise for the wrong reasons. There's 21 reasons, but and that's just a handful. But the thing is that the franchise, as you said, that you're buying a proven system. You hope. The thing that I like about our company, FranChoice, is that we kind of do, to the best of our ability, screen the company to make sure that they actually support their franchisees.
Right.
And they answer the phone, and there's great training and all the stuff that would make a great franchise. So there's things out there that you might know and you might love, and there might be big brands across the country. But if you look at their business model, it's absolutely terrible, and you wouldn't want to do it. And so the thing about the whole picking a franchise is really to kind of slow down and to answer your question. When somebody says, what's the hottest franchise out there, I'm like, that's like asking me who is the hottest starlet in Hollywood. I might like brunettes, you might like blondes. And it could go on and on. You can use that analogy. It's not what's the hottest, but what is the best for you, your family, and your future.
Yeah, and I think and part of the value I think that we bring to the table is we don't just say, okay, what have you looked at? And someone says restaurants, and then you kind of go down. I call it the rabbit hole. To your point, we ask why. And I've noticed that a lot of people, a comment made to me on numerous occasions is, well, everyone's got to eat. So we know that they're going to be in business, and there's going to be plenty of business, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So we almost have to decode, right? Figure out, okay, what does that mean? Everyone has to eat. In my opinion, what I'm basically hearing is that you want something that's in high demand. Maybe that's not a fad. So it's asking the questions. It's asking why. And I am shocked at how many people, I'll say, to your point, you had mentioned Cold Stone Creamery. Why do you want to invest in a Cold Stone Creamery? What do who else do you know that owns a Cold Stone? And they have no clue. They just said, I don't know. I drive by it all the time. I see that line at the door, and I like their product. But what are you really buying? You could buy any business and buy all the ice cream you want, but what system are you truly buying? Which kind of basically leads me to the conversation. You're really trying to figure out what the owner's role is, right, in the business. So we talked about this a little bit before the show, and I told you that I followed you on Facebook the last couple of months, and you've had some really good posts talking about, it's funny, kind of doing a little bit different and saying why you shouldn't buy a business, or what are some of the reasons for not buying a business. And one of the big ones that came up was passion, right? I'm passionate about golf, so I'm going to go out and buy a golfing franchise. Talk to us a little bit about that. Why isn't passion? I made that mistake, but I want the listeners to hear from you. Why not use your passion and just buy a golf franchise?
Well, they say that if you love your work, you never work a day in your life. Mm-hmm. We've heard that maxim before. So that's true if you're working a job. A business is not a job. A business is building a lifestyle.
Right.
So, I had these literally two guys that contacted me. This is early in my career, actually. And they got laid off from Wall Street, and they're like, hey, we're buddies. We're going to go into business together. We both love to golf, and we want to get into a golf franchise. And I said, yeah, that's fine. And we could look at, the different golf franchises, but they're typically like selling golf and tennis equipment in a store. You're not hanging out on the turn drinking beers with your friends. It's just, that's not what it is. And you'll probably have very limited time when you can actually golf because you're going to be stuck in this retail store. I said, how about if you kind of indulge me and go with my process and let's figure out what might work for you that will allow you to make enough money and have enough time so you could golf to your heart's content. So they kind of agreed half-heartedly, but then they got into the process with me and they ended up loving it. And they ended up buying an in-home healthcare franchise. And when I had drinks with them, it was now going back probably 3 or 4 years ago. Unfortunately, my bad. I should be talking to them more. But they said the phone was ringing off the hook. I mean, and not only do they golf when they want, but they golf at courses that are legendary all over the world.
Right. Yeah, so, which is big, right? Because if you're in that business, to me, it almost kind of kills it. That's almost like your escape golfing from work. You need that break, that outlet. And if that's your passion, that's what you're doing day in, day out. I think it kind of ruins things, right? It kind of ruins that outlet.
It really does. If you are trying to pay your mortgage with the golf business, you're going to hate golf in about 6 months.
Right.
It's not going to take that long. But it's interesting that, a lot of people just don't see the kind of the role, right? So when we were in the Super Suppers franchise, I didn't think it through in the fact that we had to be in that store nights and weekends because when are people going to come and make their meals in bulk? Right. They're working during the day. So by default, it's going to almost always be at night and on the weekends. So we wanted more time with our family, and that business took time away from us. Mm-hmm. So you have to kind of think through. I mean, it could be the best thing ever, but maybe you're making $1 million a year on it. But if you hate your life and you hate your business, is it worth it?
And I think that, and that's huge because when people tell me they've done research, and I'm at fault as well. I did this in the very beginning back in 2004, 2005 when I started looking at franchises. And you go to Entrepreneur Magazine, which is great, and the various websites, and then there's portals. But what are you truly researching, right? You're looking at maybe at the investments, you're looking at royalty, but which really doesn't mean anything if you don't know what you're getting for it. If it's 5% or 20%. But at the end of the day, is it a right fit for me? Speaking with franchise owners, and I think that's where we bring all our value, right? Our value is basically saying, okay, let's look at some businesses you maybe have never thought of. Maybe they're not sexy. Maybe they're a porta potty franchise, dumpsters, mosquito spraying, and things like that. Things you never thought of. I got into cleaning. Nowhere did I ever think of getting into commercial cleaning and building maintenance. That was definitely not on top of the list. But when you break it down and you're working with a coach to really analyze your skill set, right? So I call it kind of reverse engineering it, working in reverse. What's the skill set? What are the characteristics? We create a model. Talk to us about that, because that's ultimately putting the product or service aside, changing our opinion on the business model. What is that ideal way of figuring out that model, that ideal franchise, and then from there selecting the franchise? Because that's where I think a lot of us are getting stuck on.
Well, if we were crashing on a plane and I had one kind of thing to impart to you about franchising, it would be, don't become infatuated with a concept. Just, when you're infatuated, you can't think straight.
Right.
You think you're in love, but you're not. So a lot of people approach it in the wrong manner. Like I said, there's 21 different reasons why people go down the wrong road. And it could be like, I saw a store that's available in my neighborhood. That's no reason to become an entrepreneur. Or the food is the worst. When people are like, they have great food and they always have a line. Yeah, that's fine, but do you realize that it costs like $900,000 to open up one of those places? And you're like, oh, and you're gonna have a whole bunch of bratty kids working for you that don't come to work because they got in a fight with their girlfriend or something like that. It's like you got to really think through what this is gonna look like on the other end. And there's so many other businesses that you could look at that are, low investment, they have high margins. They might be Amazon resistant, which I think
Right.
is a big thing these days. And now we have a year's worth of data on things that worked in the pandemic, so pandemic resilient. And I always share with folks the least sexy the business, the more money it makes. and people like they don't get that at the outset, but you know, you could look at some of the best food franchises. They're really expensive to open, and they have the smallest profit margin of just about any industry you could be in. And then, you know, you look at the other side of the coin, and you could be in a business for a tenth of the price and make 2 or 3 times the amount of money. And you're not killing yourself. You're not in a store. You don't have a landlord that's your partner, let alone an electric company that's your partner.
Right.
So there's so many other things. So blank slate is what we talk about a lot in franchise. You got to start, you know, with I think it was Maslow who said tabula rasa, which is blank slate. And you work backwards. Like you said, you re-engineer. So if I'm doing a consultation with somebody and I hear them say in passing, you know, one thing I really love to do is go down and, you know, pick up donuts on the weekend for my family. It's like a tradition. So I don't say, oh my God, we should look at Dunkin' Donuts. He said donuts, Dunkin' Donuts. You know, that's not what we do.
Right.
We kind of say, you know, what could you do that's going to allow you to, you know, bring home donuts every single day because you're not working a job. You're not in a cubicle. You know, and that's a big thing today where I don't know about you on your side of the phone, but I've been hearing people say things I've never heard before in 16 years of doing this, which is I have tasted freedom because of COVID and the lockdowns, you know, working from home. I've tasted freedom and I don't want to go back to the cubicle, the crazy boss, and the commute. Can you help me?
Yes. I actually, believe it or not, I think we've all heard that. It's right. They get the taste like, wow, you know, I can do this, or maybe I can keep my job and have a side business, a semi-absentee business. I just actually had a friend of mine, a colleague of mine that we worked together for years on Wall Street. And he got the taste and he's like, you know what? I got the bug. I want to see what's out there. That now that it's probably another 6 months plus until I go back into the office, and I want something I can transition into. So I want to take advantage of this time. So absolutely. To your point from what you were saying earlier, I almost tell people, you heard the expression, think outside the box. And maybe I stole this from another consultant. Maybe I stole this from you. Who knows? Maybe from the last show. But I jokingly say now, you know, stay in the box. Don't think outside. Stay within the box, your box. And people say, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, if forget about what you think you can make more money or what the future looks like in certain industries. If you can create that canvas, that blank slate, we'll even call it a box, and put in everything you want, your skill set, what your wants are, not just in the business, but you want a lifestyle business, maybe a business that functions 7-8 months a year so you can travel internationally, or the business doesn't miss a beat. Put that all into that box and then find franchises that match it. Because what I did, and you know, and I admit to this, and luckily did not invest in this particular franchise. I went out and said, okay, I want, you know, this franchise and that franchise, and yeah, it does require nights and weekends, but I'll change my priorities a little bit. It does require 24/7, you know, kind of like a one of these emergency services, and I don't want to be on call, but I'll make that change as well. All of a sudden, I've changed my model completely to adapt to fit these other franchise brands. And I think, you know, that's a huge mistake.
Yeah.
You know, you start changing what you want. And when people come to me and they say, you know, how, you know, well, kind of what we were talking about before, how, you know, when you're with a franchise, how much more successful can I be with a franchise versus a non-franchise? And I simply just say, you know, we have to find a business that matches what you're looking for, right? 4,000 franchise companies out there. If you don't follow the system, that's one of the major reasons for failure. And number two, if you are matched with the wrong franchise, you're setting yourself up for failure. And that kind of messes with all the stats of how successful franchises are, because, you know, if all these people are just being matched with the wrong franchise, obviously they may not, I'm not saying they're all going to fail, but it's going to decrease their odds of being successful, in my opinion. So
Yep.
it's a little scary that a lot of people are buying the wrong franchises for them. And I think I mean, for the price that we charge for our services, I think it's a no-brainer to work with a consultant who's a good fit for you.
Right. And how much is our service?
It's free. You just have to put up with our jokes. So
Right.
my jokes.
Right. And that's why I say to people all the time, you got to put up with my Brooklyn accent. That's
right.
But yeah, we work like recruiters in franchising. So if the franchise company pays us a commission for bringing somebody not only well qualified, but something that we didn't talk about, someone that matches the top performing profile of the current franchise owners in that concept. So when somebody lands at a concept, they may not have the same job experience, but they'll have the same skill sets as majority of the top performers in the franchise. And as you look at a franchise, whether there's 10 franchisees or 1,000, they span a bell curve.
Mm-hmm.
So, you got 20% of your top performers and 20% of your bottom, and then 60% are in the top of that bell, which is average. So it's just like a football team, right? You got 20% that are killing it. You know who they are. You got, 60% that are making the plays. They show up for practice. Everything's cool. No complaints. And then 20% are sitting on the bench.
Right.
So you want to find out, why are they sitting on the bench? Like, what are they not bringing to the table? And make sure you're not that same personality when you go through the due diligence and the validation calls that we help you do. But that's really an important thing to note is, as we're talking about, things are coming up for me, but people don't understand that franchising probably is the most transparent investment they could possibly make in their lifetime, because we encourage you to call franchise owners in the systems that we match you to. And so when you do that, you're talking to the end user. So it's like, oh, I want to buy this stock. Let me call a bunch of people that bought it and just see how it's going. You can't do that. You could try to do some anecdotal stuff, but it's not as good as literally talking to the person that's in it. And then we give them a battery of questions to ask. And one of the best questions is, now that you've been in it, would you do it again?
Yep. The $1 million question, they call it.
Right. The answer to that is everything you need to know.
Yeah, and that's huge. And we talk about, and we could do a whole show on advantages, assuming it's a fit for you of obviously of franchising. But the $1 million question that you just mentioned, and to your point earlier, during the pandemic, a lot happened in the past 12 months or so. What did the franchisor do to kind of step up and help their franchisees? And not to talk about specific brands, but we had some phenomenal examples of what franchisors did to step up, help their franchisees grow, support, and that's why you're buying it. You're not, a license is more, I think, of you get everything up front and then you just pay your small fee and you go on with your business. A franchise, there's an upfront investment. But you're paying that ongoing royalty, which is how the franchise companies are making money for that true support. You're having issues. You're not growing as quickly as possible. You need advice. You have that coach, that support person, whoever that person is to really assist you. So I think that's huge. And asking that question, talking to other franchisees, I think is huge. I think it's a great benefit, in your due diligence. And then after you invest in the franchise, it's like, okay, guys, you've been, you're my neighboring franchise. Why don't we come together and, some marketing efforts? Maybe we do some seminars together. I've heard stories in my career where that neighboring franchise says, I'm selling, hey, do you want to buy me out? And you can take over the rest of this northern or central New Jersey market or whatever the market is. And there's some huge benefits. We'll probably do an entire show on that. So there's a lot. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, I'm like, what else can we put in here? Because we could be talking for hours.
Yeah.
I truly enjoy what we do. We definitely get to help people. And sometimes it's unfortunate, but we need to tell people maybe a franchise or business isn't a right fit, or maybe the timing is off, and kind of helping them put together that plan. Maybe it's just everything but the investments off. They just don't have the funds. Anything you'd like to kind of leave the audience with as far as advice when a lot of people just kind of starting their search into franchise ownership?
Yeah, my advice is don't become infatuated with the concept.
Mm-hmm.
What you think is good for you, most likely is probably not good for you. Use a coach, whether it's G or somebody else. Really get inside advice, but also look for that experience, because there's a lot of people out there that call themselves franchise consultants and they're not. They've never owned a franchise. They have not been in the franchise industry. Yes. But they bought into some kind of license program that makes them a franchise. So you got to watch out for that. That's a really important piece. And the thing, for me is you got to realize, even though there's fees, like to answer you were talking about the difference franchise, not franchise, the fees that you pay. So there's really an upfront franchise fee and ongoing royalties. Upfront franchise fee is basically tuition up front.
Mm-hmm.
So you're buying down your time to ramp up and buying up the time to get to a profit. And you're getting a website and training and all sorts of stuff. Right. Actually, that money that you pay is really a lot. It's a loss to the franchise company. And then the royalties, you're paying royalties for support and help and marketing and all this stuff, which you'll be paying for anyway, just in a different way, paying individuals for all that kind of support in your own mom and pop business. So I believe it's a misnomer that franchises are more expensive. I think in the long run, they're less expensive over time because you're going to end up being successful, where most mom and pop startups fail within the first 12 months.
Right. You need the cards all in your favor. Absolutely. I can't tell you how many people have that business plan on their laptop and never do anything with it. So time value of money. I'm an investor prior to getting into franchising, and sitting on a business plan for 10 years. Okay. Maybe it didn't cost you anything, but your time to type it up. But, what did it cost you as far as opportunity? That opportunity is lost. So, I think franchising could be a springboard, stepping stone, whatever you want to call it, into your entrepreneurial journey. And, that next business may not be a franchise. It may be a startup. It may be a business that complements the franchise or vice versa. So, so many opportunities. And to your point, if you are going to be working with that coach or consultant, even though the service is free, interview them as well. Make sure they're a personality match, right? And the second thing is obviously the experience, reading about entrepreneurship and having a business and struggling with payroll or getting ramped up. Those are things that you cannot learn in school. That's something that you learn, directly in owning your own business. So definitely do your own due diligence when working with a coach. And Tom's been doing this for a long time. He's been on both ends, successful franchise, not so successful, but he learned from his experiences. So definitely reach out to Tom.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, G. But I also, I just got to add, one of my favorite sayings is, if you were in a war, who would you want in the foxhole next to you? Somebody that was in a war before, or somebody that taught at West Point?
Right. Let me think about that one. It's true, right? I mean, it's the experience is I'll throw another one in there. I shouldn't say this. Maybe I'll get in trouble, but maybe I knew of someone that went to a university. We'll leave it at that. And they took an entrepreneur. I forget the name of the class, but it was for entrepreneurs. So the individual went up to the professor and said, well, what businesses have you owned? And they said none. So that individual just walked out the door, because you really need to, it's not just facts, right? What do you do with these facts? It's experiences, it's feelings, it's emotions on, yes, I was with the franchise, but maybe it didn't go smoothly, for whatever reason, because it had nothing to do with the franchise. But, some people, it's I had a steady income and now I have a new business. So not being able to pay myself that first month or whatever it may be. So there's a lot that goes on that people may not think about, or as a coach, it's our job to bring that stuff up and discuss, are you okay with going, X amount of time without income if it's a brick and mortar location that you eventually have to find that location, permits, and get the build out. So I think it's a lot of the value we bring. And those are questions only, I believe, only a business owner, are able to bring up and to talk about. So, anyway, yeah, a lot of stuff I wanted to bring up, but I know we just hit the 35-minute mark. Yeah. Tom, it's been a pleasure. So you got a lot going on, book, podcast, someone wants to reach out to you, learn a little bit more about franchising, get some advice from you. What's the best way they could reach you?
Well, go right through this podcast. My information will be there, but so we'll know where you came from. But it's just thefranchiseacademy.com. It's my books, educational videos. I just released a online course, which is how to buy a franchise A to Z. It's 45 videos in a package, everything that you need to know in one shot. There's a cost to that. Just about everything else out there is free. My book, Franchise Savvy, is on Amazon, but you can do it all through my website. So thefranchiseacademy.com is where to go.
Awesome. Tom, it's been a pleasure. I'm glad I'm not the only one saying, we're definitely on the same page. It's a pleasure having you on. I look forward, as we were talking, to have more consultants on. I like to hear different perspectives and where other people have come from. But again, I really appreciate your time, and looking forward to Nashville.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll see you there at the next franchise convention.
Awesome.
But thanks for having me on your show, G. This is awesome.
Thank you. Thanks again, Tom. I'll talk to you soon.
God bless.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.